got a shorter period, right? Right here, 47 or something. Okay. Are there any of those on the backside that I can help? Yeah. 8. Construct a table showing the value of an account with $100 deposits on the first of every month for a year, gains 4% monthly on the last day of the month. Determine how much the final account's saying. Construct a table showing a value of an account. Okay, so this is number 8. So we're doing $100 each month. That's earning 4%. Okay. All right, well, so let's just do it over a year. So we're going to do 12 months. Let's just do 9 months. All right, so if you deposit 100 the first year, or in the first month, the next month that becomes 104. And rather than be bounce back and forth between screens, I'm just going to use my old calculator. I think it's my freshman. You guys help me out with my freshman calculator. The shakedown. So 104 times point. Oops. 0.04. So that means that the next month becomes 108.16, and all I'm doing is just multiplying by 1.04. Then I have 112.49 times 1.04. So 116.99 times 1.04. 121.67 times 1.04. 126.53. Oh. I goofed. Friends, I'm sorry. I'm an inadequate teacher. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, your first month, $100. Second month, I'm going to go another 100 plus 104, so that's 204. And then I need the calculator from there. Third month, I'm going to plug in another $100. So I'm going to go 204 times 1.04. 212.16. Fourth month, $100. 312.16 times 1.04. So 424.64. Fifth month, put another $100 in, and times 424.64 times 1. So 541.63. So basically, all I'd be doing to get this chart is, you know that the 100's going in each month, and then what I do to this value to get to this value is I multiply by 1.04, and then this value to get to here I multiply by 1.04, multiply by 1.04, and then this to get to this value multiply by 1.04, etc. That's what I had been doing. Okay, so yeah, it seems to, obviously it's growing. At the fifth month you have $541 in there. The nice thing about it is you've only put 500 in, and at the fifth month still have $41.63 in interest you made, that is good. So, that is right. All right. Does that help you on that one? You have to go through all 12 months. What, any others that you want to take a look at, or you feel comfortable with it? All right. So, let's go to 6.2, number 2, and we'll take a look at, say, the first problem, maybe do one more. Says you have $10,000. You wish to have $10,000 in 4 years to buy a car. Okay. And you want to make this happen in 4 years. How much did you deposit each month? So we're putting some amount in each month. That's earning 8%, and it's compounded monthly. Okay. How much interest will you have in the 4 years? Or how much interest will the account earn in 4 years? Okay. So I think we can jump in on our buddy the calculator. Let's clear that. Let's go to apps, finance, TVM solver. And let's see. You wish to have 10,000. So our future value we want to be 10,000. In 4 years, and we're doing 4 years, and we're putting something every month in, so 4 times 12. And we're earning 8% interest. The previous value was 0, but we wanted to get up to that. So, and it's compounded each month, so 12 there, perfect. So I can figure out how much I need to pay. So I'm going to go alpha enter. So if I put $177.46 each month into an account, we would get to the $10,000. And then how much interest will the account earn in 4 years? Okay. So I'm going to make a payment of $177.46. So and how many months did we say? 48? Bless you. So that's how much we would have had to put in. So we live off the interest. Or we made $1,481.92 interest. So does everyone understand when you put into a bank, the bank doesn't sit there and say, "Oh, cool, this stirrup guy put $10,000 in his account. My $10,000 just doesn't sit in an account as cash. The bank is using that money for investments and things like that, and hopefully it's earning interest. Unfortunately, the banks have not recovered interest rates to what they had been prior to 2008. And I don't understand why. Well, I understand the greed factor. I do understand, but I saw the other day in the newspaper that there was a bank that they wanted you to tie up your money for 36 months in a CD account. So that means you can't touch the money. So for 3 years, and it was going to earn 1.03% interest. Prior to 2008, this same exact account would have probably brought between 4 and 5% interest in. And the frustrating thing for me on the banks and why they're not increasing the interest is when 2008 hit, the federal government bailed banks out for defaulted loans on houses. So the banks did not lose money. But the banks still to this day refuse to raise the interest rate to anything that's worth a darn. This is a general rule. They call it the rule of 72. Okay. And this is what we do for the rule of 72 is you take 72 and you divide it by whatever percent interest you would get. And that would tell you how long it would take for you to double your money. Well, that account that was 1.03, if I went 72 divided by 1.03, it would take you about 70 years to double your money. That's horrible. I mean, could you imagine if you put $10,000 in order for that $10,000 to become $20,000, you would have to leave it there for 70 years? There's an awful lot of life that takes place from when you invested in 70 years later, including the cost of living, for the most part, ranges anywhere from 3 to 4% a year. So right now these days, this is higher because we are in a huge inflation. And you're like, where does the inflation take place? Have you seen the gas pumps? But I also heard this. And I'm trying to fathom how this would work. It said it was basically a story that a father or a grandpa, let's go with a grandfather, because it'd probably fathom more with you, that in the 1950s was paying like 55 cents a gallon for gas. Okay? Whereas now in 2022, this is like, let's just raise it to $5 a gallon. Okay, I think that's about where it's at, isn't it? Is it 4? 4? All right, let's round it up to 4. So, I thought this was an interesting perspective. So obviously, we would love to pay 55 cents a gallon. But the average house, so the cars back in the 50s had an average of 13 miles per gallon, whereas cars of today have more of a 25 miles per gallon that we get. Yes, I understand there's cars that get more than that. There are some that get less than that, but they're saying the average is that. So you take this into account. Well, let's call this 26. So that would mean for every 26 miles this person in the 50s drove, they would have dropped $1.10 to drive 26 miles. Whereas here, for me to drive 26 miles, I would drop $4. Okay, so now we're talking about almost $3 difference. Well, the reality is the household incomes, the average income back in the 1950s was about $3,000 per year. Whereas the income of today is, the average American income is $50,000 per year. So then you go and you take into account income today is more than 10 times what it was yesteryear. So that would mean that two things would have to take place. In order for this looks like an absolute dream. This looks like an absolute nightmare. But when you look at the time, you know, if you go from a car that was averaging, I mean, back then cars were heavy. I mean, they were all steel. There wasn't plastic. Even the dashboard was steel. And they started realizing you get in a car accident, you smash against steel. That's not good. Heck, I can tell you when I was a kid, so there used to be a lap seat belt that you put on, and then they had the shoulder harness you had to undo, you had to unfold it, and then click it into a different one. So then you had the shoulder harness. I remember my grandfather screaming at me because I undid this nice buckle, a safety device, so I had a shoulder strap to plug in because it looked nice up there. He was taking a safety device and thought it was better to have the safety device look nice as decoration than use as a safety device. And I remember him screaming at me for doing it. It'll never get up there and look as nice as it did. It's like, this saves lives. And it was just goofy. So in the reality, in order for us to have the pinch of what this was, even though this looks absolutely fantastic, in order for us to have the equivalent amount, because you're getting 13 miles per gallon average back then, you're getting 26 miles per gallon average now, you go from an income of $3,000 a year to an income of $50,000 a year. This price here should be close to $11 a gallon to match up with how much that was as a pinch. Now, I'm not trying to make you feel better about, you know, $4 a gallon, but in the reality, there's our quality of life right now is better than it was in the 1950s because we're making more money than they had made. We have cars that are getting better gas mileage. So there's just a whole lot of characteristics that you kind of think about that take place. I mean, I'm going to make up some phony math, and I'm just going to see how this works. So 0.55 times 13 times 3,000, and then I'm going to go 4 times 26 times 50,000. Yeah. 2, 4, 2, 1. This is an absolute blessing compared to this. Even though if you look at just the one value here, this looks fantastic compared to, but then you take into account cars are getting twice as good of mileage. So that means, you know, this guy would drop $1.10 versus our $4. This guy was making $3,000 a year on average, and today we're making this a year. So in order for gasoline to have stayed with what the product development was of how cars are doing better and how incomes are doing better, this should be closer to $11 a gallon, which, could you imagine dropping $11 a gallon?
Like California.
Yeah, but I thought it was a really interesting perspective. You know, and I look at it this way too. So my very first teaching job 26 years ago paid me $25,000 a year. And now, many years later, I'm over $100,000 a year. So I'm making 4 times what I made than what I had originally made. Now, that comes with years of experience, more education, getting a master's degree, and all this kind of stuff. That's how teacher salaries work. I know that what I have now, I look at what I have now, what between my wife and I both working and what my kids have, there's a heck of a lot more. I just go back and think of, like, the toys that they had so many toys as kids. They don't have the toys now because, they're adults. But I remember like me having a birthday, I would get like 2 toys as a kid. When my daughters had birthdays, oh my gosh. I don't think the summation of one of their birthdays what they got in toys equated to what I got in the summation of all my years of my birthdays as a kid. So I guess the perspective that you kind of have to look at is, are we better off even though we're dropping $4 a gallon? But I think where the hurt takes place, and I don't recall, but I imagine 2 years ago we were probably dropping maybe $2.30 a gallon for gas. Now we're at $4 roughly. I don't know. It's an interesting perspective, and I read this in the paper the other day, and I thought it was a good lesson for just the reality of what things were. So I don't know if you've ever taken that into context. Kind of interesting. So, hey, would you all take a look? Let's have us do finish up. Excuse me. 6.2 number 2. And let's have you do problems 1, 2, and 3. And I'll check that off tomorrow. Sound like a deal?